I'm George غالاوي and I present كلمة on Mayadeen television. Here we are in London. I speak my words freely, either in Parliament, on television, here on the streets of London. كلمة means free word. That's what I speak. So كلمة is a two-way conversation. Check it out on Mayadeen television. Welcome to كلمة with me, George غالاوي, on Mayadeen television, coming to you from London, but discussing Spain, Catalonia, the referendum, and what happens next. Let me begin by declaring a complete lack of interest. I have no interest in whether Spain becomes 2 countries or stays as 1, or becomes 3 countries or 10 countries. They'll all be capitalist countries. They'll all be in or seek to be in the European Union. They'll all be in or seek to be in NATO. In the case of Catalonia, it has a right-wing government, just as the government in Madrid is a right-wing government. In the case of Catalonia, just like Spain, both prime ministers declare their absolute admiration for and support for Israel. Nothing will change if Spain breaks up. If I were Spanish, I would have a point of view, and it would be against the breakup of Spain on the basis that I'm only really interested in the well-being of the working class. And the working class will certainly not benefit in Spain if Catalonia goes its own way. Quite the opposite, because Catalonia is already the richest part of Spain, and the Basque Country is the second richest part of Spain. And if both break away, both will become even richer, which in the way of things means the rest of Spain will become poorer. So if I was Spanish, I'd be against it. As I'm not, I have no real interest in whether it happens or not. What I do know is that the Spanish state has behaved throughout in a way to make the breakup of their country much more likely than it might have been in the first place. Instead of doing what they should have done, saying you can have any number of referendums that you like, it won't make any difference, because Spain has a constitution which was voted on by the whole country, including Catalonia, and was approved by the whole country, including Catalonia. 91%, in fact, voted in favor of Spain's constitution in Catalonia. And that constitution says that Spain is indivisible. Now, they didn't do that. They began to steal ballot papers. They began to steal election leaflets. They sent in the heavy mob. Looked like a rerun of General Franco, actually, to me, to beat senseless anyone that they could find on the day of the referendum for the grave crime of exercising the right to express their opinion. I don't believe myself that that stain will ever out. I suspect that it has made any reconciliation very much more difficult, if not impossible. So we may be set on an irresistible force meeting what may turn out to be an immovable set of objects. What are those immovable set of objects? First of all, Spain will never recognize Catalonian independence. And if Spain doesn't recognize it, none of the other countries in the EU will recognize it either. Catalonia will not be allowed to enter the EU. There may even be, quite likely actually, economic sanctions applied against Catalonia by the whole of the European Union. Just as a side matter, as someone very interested in football myself, Barcelona will have to play the rather inaptly named Espanyol every Saturday because they won't be playing in the Spanish Football League, and they therefore will not be playing in the European football championships. But I suppose that's a small matter unless you love football in Barcelona. And there might just be a few like that. So if the people of Catalonia choose to go further now down this path, then they're going to be in for a lot of difficulties. The Catalans are a nation. All nations have the right of self-determination. They have the right to exercise that self-determination by living in a multinational state, or they have the right to leave it, whatever the Constitution says. So we're in for troubled times in Europe on this question, and I just say this in finality. I have no affection for the Spanish state. Spain is an imperialist country on the wrong side of every international question, from Venezuela to the Ukraine. Spain, in its empire days, created holocausts throughout Latin America and caused the wiping out of probably millions of people and the destruction of native civilizations from one end of Latin America to the other. So I'm not here to defend Spain. Neither am I here to defend Catalonia. We have an audience of distinguished experts and one or two enthusiastic amateurs like me. So let's hear from them. Who's going to speak first? Professor, it's your good self. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, George. The first point is this is a human rights law. It's an international human rights law and an international law issue. And it's very important for the Western democracies and for the European Union in particular. Secondly, you mentioned the working class. The movement in Catalonia is a revolution from bottom up. And we wouldn't be where we are if it
has the form of revolution.
It is a revolution.
No, it has the form of revolution.
It is a revolution.
Its content is not revolutionary.
And it wouldn't have happened if it weren't for your anti-capitalist left-wing friends of the coup. It is them who have pushed the government and the leading classes to a great degree, not only, but it's a revolution. And it is a revolution to create a new republic that will be fairer, more democratic, and more human rights-based. The constitution that you mentioned...
Does Mr. Piedmont know this?
He is very much aware and in favor of this.
Oh, yeah?
He is.
He's not right-wing, then?
Well, I don't know if he's right-wing, but he's very friends with the coup. And it was the coup who appointed him or as the successor of former President Mas, the right-wing government. The constitution that you mentioned, 1978, 3 years after the dictator's death, that constitution was enacted with the guns underneath the table, tacit pacts,
but
amnesia.
91% of the people voted for it.
Well, most of those who can vote today weren't even born in 1978.
It doesn't mean they were forced at gunpoint to do it.
Oh, well, there was an army who 3 years later in 1981 did what is actually a coup and rose up against the democracy. And it's since then that the regression of Catalonia's powers has been unstoppable. 1978 was a starting point for Catalonia as a nation, as you said, as for its aspirations. And the pact, the understanding was that it would be the beginning of an arrangement, constitutional arrangement, that would allow Catalonia to find its voice after 300 years of suppression and cultural genocide. This has been broken. These are very strong words. These are very strong words. This has been broken, this pact, by a state that is unable, mentally unable and capable of accepting that it's a plural state in terms of nationalities. You have described us as a nation. Half of Spain, or at least the leading class, do not recognize us as a nation. We do not exist as a people, as a subject. So the denial of the right to vote to the Catalans, to decide their future, is a denial of our existence as a community, and by that I mean as a person, because collective rights are relevant to the extent that they relate to individual persons. My dignity, my human dignity, my sense of identity is involved in this. And by denying me and my compatriots the right to decide our future as a nation under international law, they are committing serious human rights violations. It's unconstitutional, but it's not illegal under international law. And the Spanish state signed up to its obligations, the Covenant of 1966, the civil and political rights, which recognize under international law the right of all peoples to self-determination. No, Franco was dead. It was in 1977 that it was incorporated into domestic
I thought you said
legislation.
1966.
The treaty was signed, the covenants were signed in 1966. Spain incorporated into its domestic order in 1977. Under the constitution that you mentioned, under Article 94, they have an obligation to comply with their obligations under international law, and international law takes precedence over the local law, the domestic law. So in fact, the Spanish constitution cannot be invoked by Spain to abrogate of its obligations under international law. Now,
this is a very novel concept. I knew that you had stumbled in accidentally to another program that I made just an hour and a half ago, in which you canvassed this extraordinary notion that international law can instruct national governments in national states to change their law.
I didn't have time to make that final point in our last meeting, which is the principle of territorial integrity, which is not a right, it's a principle under international law. The territorial integrity to which Spain is entitled to is a principle that applies between states to protect your sovereignty. You cannot invoke the principle of territorial integrity against your own people and the rights of those people. Now, Catalonia has been exercising its right to self-determination within Spain since 1978 by varying degrees of autonomy, which have progressively in the last number of years been reduced. But we are exercising already the right of self-determination. And I'll tell you one more thing. Catalonia is already an independent state. The problem is that the Catalans don't know it, and the Catalans don't believe it. The law enacted by the Parliament last September, Article 4, says, if the result of the referendum yields more yes votes than no, this implies the independence of Catalonia. So as we speak, Catalonia is an independent state. The next step was for the Parliament of Catalonia to declare that independence, and that has or has not been done. We don't know. We don't know. We'll know on Monday, tomorrow. That's one issue. That's the exercise of our right as a nation. The next issue is, well, is this enforceable? And a final question is, will this be recognized by the international community? There are three different things. The right exists, we've exercised it, we are independent, what are you going to do about it? And what will Spain do about it? Will they allow us to exist as a people if that's our will? If they're not happy with this way of doing things, please change the constitution, do it properly, do it as you did it in the UK.
Well, we have no constitution, of course, in the UK. And there's something to be said, actually, for not having a constitution. It allows quite a bit more flexibility. Yeah. The British state, therefore, facilitated the Scottish referendum, and the Scottish people exercised their right of self-determination. I'm one of them. And the decision that they made was to remain in a multinational state. And that was their right, just as it would have been their right to leave the United Kingdom as a state. That's helpful. Isaac.
Well, I wanted to talk about Scotland, but first I wanted to say something for our Arab viewers. Catalonia is exactly in the opposite side as Syria, Lebanon, and the Levant. And for hundreds of years, they have some relation. I understand that Barcelona was founded by the Barca, that used to be a Lebanese Phoenician family. When the Phoenicians come to conquest Rome with Hannibal, they come to Catalonia. And Catalonia was for around 8 centuries the frontier between the Arab world and the Christian world. No?
Have you any idea why the First Minister of Catalonia is so much in love with Netanyahu and Israel?
I do. Well, I don't know very much about that. I see that other people.
I know a lot about it.
In the case of Catalonia, the Spanish government didn't want to allow a referendum. They repressed the referendum, 900 people injured. With that attitude, they have been putting more fire to the situation and inflamed the Catalans. If Spain wants to be maintained as a democratic state, they should allow the Catalans the right to vote. And if the conservatives in Spain and the social democrats in Spain want to keep Spain united, the best way to do that is to allow a referendum. And I think that the fact that the People Party in Spain didn't allow a referendum is creating a very difficult situation. And now we are going to have perhaps the Basques are going to ask for independence, and some other countries in other parts of France, other parts of Italy. So we are creating a
Well,
very
that's right.
serious
That's
crisis.
what the EU said, didn't it? That this could create a domino effect. There are many, some of them almost fascistic, separatist movements in Europe. Flemish separatism, for example, doesn't want to live in Belgium because it doesn't like the Catholic French. The Northern Leagues in Italy want to break up Italy and become an independent state because they say Africa begins at Rome. And in fact, Venice wants to be an independent city-state. Bavaria wants to be an independent country because it doesn't want to carry the poor people of Eastern Germany and regards itself as likely to be very much richer. So there is a domino issue here, isn't there?
Yeah, but not all the nationalists in Europe are right-wing oriented. No, some are them left-wing oriented, like in Wales or Scotland, or so it's not one-sided. No, and I wanted to raise another issue. The European Union was created because the NATO divided the Eastern Bloc, no, the so-called socialist bloc. They fight for the division of Czechoslovakia, of Soviet Union, and Yugoslavia. But in their own case, they are against the independence of any country that is part of the European Union, Spain, Britain.
Good point.
No?
Good point. Professor, very briefly, you had an answer to Mr. Pidgemont's love affair with Israel.
Catalonia has a particular relationship with the State of Israel. Now, let me start by saying before this audience, I'm against the State of Israel's actions in the occupied territories, and I believe in the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination, to return to their lands, etc. But we admire, some of us, some of the Catalans, admire the efforts that the Jewish people did post-war, after the genocide of the Second World War, to survive and to preserve and to recover their language. And we sought inspiration in their determination to survive as a people.
I'd like to take this gentleman here.
Hi, so I'm Javier Adam. We're quite big investors in Europe, and we were big investors in Spain. And sort of after what we saw the other weekend, we've pulled a lot of money out of Madrid because it's just it's not a regime that we're going to support until...
How much money are we talking about?
Oh, a lot of money, over €1 billion. We took 300 million out, and we've frozen 1.1, so it's 1.4 billion at the moment, which we're not spending in central Spain. We'll spend in Catalonia, and I've got about 10 projects I'm looking at. We'll spend in País Basque. But what we saw was deplorable. There's a lot more to it than has been reported. Now, I won't go on too much, but basically this has been building up for a long time. And they'd been denying civil rights, they'd been shutting internet, they'd been raiding ministries, all sorts of stuff that they shouldn't be doing before this vote took place. Now, I think one of your points is about helping the working class. At the moment in Spain, in central Spain, you've got a very small elite of people running things. And this is all about, they're very, very worried that the top's about to be blown off their little game, okay? The working people in Spain are not benefiting at the moment. If Catalonia sorts itself out and gets out, which it needs to do, it can then possibly help the normal people in the rest of Spain, because at the moment, young people don't have opportunities because it's old men. If you look at all the ministers at the moment, they're all 50, 60 plus. They look old, they act old, they think they're going to trick people, so you have videos of people being beaten up, and then they lie about this sort of stuff, and it just doesn't wash. I mean, I saw an American journalist who just thought this guy was crazy. It was I think it's the External Affairs Minister of Spain. So at the moment, Spain's kind of broken, Spain's dividing. Now, Catalonia is a much more united society, and they're kind of going together in one direction, by and large. Now,
yes, but it's 7 million in Catalonia and 60 million in Spain.
Well,
so you're one of the few capitalists, and I'm grateful for your tender concern for the working class. You're one of the few capitalists, billionaire capitalists, who's more interested in the market of 7 million than you are in the market of 60 million. Explain that.
Well, I don't know if it is 60 million because they don't really have an idea how many people are there in Spain at the moment. If you look at figures, it ranges from 40 to 56 million, I think I've seen. But no, I mean, we will not support that sort of regime. There's no way. Now, outside of the ethics of it, the economy's going nowhere. As soon as I saw the people being beaten up and really beaten, I saw one girl get every finger broken, saw old people hit, I saw a doctor resuscitating somebody, and the police pushed the crowd on top of him. It's really, really bad. People are not going to invest there. Now, the reason it hasn't hit the press yet, which it's kind of starting to, is because investors are trying to offload things in Madrid and other parts of Spain. We've been offered lots of things because we're specialists in that market. Now you'll see that things are really getting sticky. The Spanish government on Friday, they kind of revised down their growth figures for next year. Now, it's just really obvious stuff. If you are running a fairly developed country and then your answer is to start hitting people and kicking them and causing pandemonium, all premeditated. It's really important to know the police, most of them were shipped in from outside Catalonia. I've got videos, I've got photos, etc. They were revved up. They hate the Catalans, okay? Let's face it. They've got money, the Catalans. They live in nice places. They look after their places by and large. They went to sleepy villages to smash them up, to cause destruction. They went to expensive places like Girona, where Puigdemont's from. And the whole thing was planned. I've got a map of where the worst incidents took place. And this wasn't big crowds and the police just turning up and seeing who was there. They were trying to get into the psyche of the Catalans, which they'll never, ever, ever do because it's a very tight community. And they're also trying to affect the young people and scare them for the next 50 years. So they went to schools and there's schools in Barcelona where they smashed every door, and there was just no need for that. It was just wanton violence, and it was planned, and it came from the top. And it's very, very bad in 2017 to be living in a society like that.
Well, a lot of home truths out already, and much more to come after this. You're watching كلمة with me, George Galloway, on Mayadeen television, coming to you from London, but discussing Catalonia and Spain. And we've learned from one of our experts that Mr. Barça, who founded Barcelona, was Lebanese. Who'd have thunk it? Now, we took the كلمة camera onto the streets of London. Let's take a look at what people said.
Do you think the Catalans have the right to ask for an independent state?
I think certainly, yeah, they do.
I do think that they should have the right to vote, because without the vote then there's no democracy.
Yes, I do, if that's what they decide. But I think it should be done within the legal framework of the country.
For the moment, I think we should just wait and see how the situation evolves rather than taking like extreme decisions and ended up in chaos where no agreements have been made and both parties are unable to communicate in the future.
They have the right to choose whether they are under another leader or no.
They certainly have the right to ask for it.
Do you think it will affect Spain a lot?
I would think so.
So how would you feel if Catalan or Barcelona is no longer part of the EU?
Well, being British, obviously, they'd be joining us, I guess. Again, that would be up to them if that's what they wanted.
I don't think it's ever a good idea to divide a country in that way.
Do you think it would affect the EU in any way?
I think it would affect the EU, but I mean, if they won the referendum, then they should be ready for that being an option, them not being a part of the EU.
So how would you feel if Catalonia gained independence and then left the EU?
Sad. I don't want Catalonia to leave the EU. I mean, if it has to leave Spain, I would rather it stay in the EU. Like I would want Scotland to gain independence from the UK and join the EU.
Well, there you go. Quite a high level of understanding of the issues there on the streets of London, but not as high as our studio audience. Yes, sir, you have the microphone. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Ian. I work as a journalist. First, I would like to argue to my colleague here on the left, don't know who you've asked in Spain, but no one in Spain hates the Catalans and no one in Spain hates the Catalan people. What they do like is to have a good debate about the Catalan issue. And in this debate, it's very important to put the facts right and to put the facts in place. My colleague here was arguing against the police brutality and against the raids that were taking place in the different minister offices. The government has reason to do this, and the reason is because the High Court declared all this process to be illegal, and the government, the Spanish government, therefore, is trying to abide by the constitution. Having said this, I am not against an independence vote. I do believe that the Catalan people should have an independence vote. I also think that the Spanish constitution should be changed and should enable the Catalan people or any other people to exercise the right to freely cast their vote. But what I do not agree are the arguments that have been shown by the Catalan side for why they would like to request or demand independence. I do not believe that there is a problem of human rights. Every single Catalan has the option to vote in every election. Every Catalan has the option to be part of the social life and of the political life. They have the option to come into politics and to be part of the institution and to change the system from where it has to be changed, which is from the institutions and from the law. I do not believe that, as my colleague here on the right was saying, that the Spanish constitution was signed under gunpoint. There were 7 people who redacted the Spanish constitution. 2 of them were Catalans. This constitution is very heavily based on the constitution previous to the dictatorship of Franco in terms of the Second Republic. It's very based also on the German constitution that is based on a federal state, and therefore it has from day one given the theme or the importance of autonomies the highest importance. I do not believe that Catalonia has been losing power since 1978's constitution. Just a few years after the constitution, the first statute was signed. Then in the year 2006, a new statute was elaborated, and although it did go through a big review from the Spanish authorities that did take away quite a lot of their contents, I believe, or it's my opinion, that Catalonia has been gaining in autonomy. And if you compare the level of autonomy that Catalonia has with other parts of the world that may be in a similar situation, you can realize that Catalonia really has a big degree of autonomy. Having said this, they still have all the right to feel that they want to independ themselves, and if they do, I'm not going to be the one who's going to stop them.
Well, look, a rather inflammatory and grossly misleading statement was made earlier that there is a cultural genocide in Catalonia. There was a cultural genocide against all the civilization of Spain during decades of fascist dictatorship. That's one of the reasons why my grandfathers went to fight in Spain to defend the Spanish Republic. But to say that now, since the demise of fascism in Spain, that a cultural genocide is being waged in Catalonia is pretty hard to justify. However, what matters is not what you think or what I think, but what they think. And if the Catalans are determined, even at great cost, and we'll come on to that later, there will be massive cost involved here. Your billions might not be as safe as you think, because of course, if Catalonia is not in the EU, as it will not, it cannot, and if it's not recognized by the vast majority of countries in the world, Israel has said it will recognize it, but no one else has, then there will be severe economic consequences of that. Maybe you should freeze your money for a little bit longer and see how it works out. Ian, they seem determined upon it, don't they? Or is there, because only 50% of the people actually voted in the referendum, which is hardly surprising given the reign of terror that the Spanish police and the Guardia Civil cast upon the whole thing. Is there, in your view, a significant body of opinion in Catalonia that doesn't actually want separation?
I think there is. I think if they talk about the silent majority, it is a concept that I do not agree with to a 100%. But it is obvious that there is a very large part of the Catalan population that does not agree with what the Catalan government is going for. You can just see it in the Catalan parliament. It's not a 60, it's not a 70% in favor of the independence. You have the Catalan Popular Party, you have the Catalan Socialist Party, you have the Catalan Ciutadans. There are three of the major political parties in Spain that they represent quite a large amount of the Catalan society.
And they're against independence.
And they are against independence. So I do not agree that the entirety of the Catalan population wants this independence. And I think that taking into consideration what happened in the United Kingdom with Brexit, where 49% voted something and 51% voted the opposite thing.
48, don't exaggerate. 48, 52.
The difference, the consequence of that is that the United Kingdom is very divided. And the Spanish and Catalonia, people in Catalonia are very divided on the same topic. And to proclaim unilateral independence, disregarding the opinion of such a large amount of the Catalan population, I think it's wrong.
Who else would like to speak? Who hasn't? Yes, Madame.
Thank you. My name is Natalia. I work in the Catalan delegation office here in London. Thank you. But I'm here as a citizen, so I appreciate all the comments, obviously, but I would like to come back to the human side of it. At the end of the day, this is a movement that starts from down, cross party, let's say, and when politics doesn't serve the people, something's wrong. When the law doesn't serve the society, something's wrong. So at the end of the day, we can argue the tribunal, the constitutional tribunal has said this, the law says that. We need to find a solution. There's a political solution we need to find. And that's why the human beings are asking to our politicians, there must be an international playground playing as well. Somebody told me recently, Brexit is a nuisance for Europe. Catalonia is the real problem. So please, everybody has to understand that the society, those who doesn't want to break up, that some of them, quite a lot of them, went to vote, and those who want a solution, apart from Spain, we are not against Spain. We need to find a solution. If the result of a referendum, we had a referendum, but let's say, okay, the perfect playground would be a referendum, agree with the Spanish government. Yes, that's right.
Is there any solution short of independence that would satisfy you?
Natalia, I like to have an state. Natalia, the citizen, a state who could be have a say in the war, to get profit to the war, especially to have a wonderful and profitable link to Spain. Our families are mixed. My own family come from, let me tell you something very private. I'm coming from Guardia Civil, and I'm independent. So it's a very mixed society.
But we have heard here that the Spanish people hate Catalans.
No, I don't agree with that.
It was said.
Well, but I don't agree. I don't talk about people themselves. I have seen many of scenes from Andalusia, Madrid, people saying we need to talk, we need to give response to. You cannot deny 2 million people. You cannot deny that never happened. You cannot say to that, oh, the law says no. the law is not working when they don't want to give an answer to that.
Thank you, Natalia. That's been very helpful. Yes, gentleman right behind you.
Just responding to the gentleman, how many TV programs and radio shows are in Spain only programming against Catalan? I can tell you at least 6. My colleagues can say. Intereconomia, 13 TV, all that stuff. How many are in Catalonia? We have the APM. We laugh about those programs with humor. So that real hate. And that real hate is established in Spain. Established, I mean, we know that, not everybody. Not all Guardia Civil people hate Catalans. Not all Policía Nacional hates Catalans, we know that. But the hate established in the government from Franco till now. And, well, you just there, I wanted to just...
well, yeah, we have a clear division. Natalia is very clear that they don't hate Catalans, but that's now 3 people who have said they do. And that's quite significant. Yes, sir.
You know, there was a point mentioned earlier about that, of course, Catalans do not hate Spanish people in general, and neither the other way around. But Spain being part of Europe and the Western world, which we claim to be very civilized, wouldn't it have been nice to allow a referendum by amending the constitution, and with the opposition you're claiming there is a lot of opposition in Catalan against independence, and let it prove on the ground, and then deal with it like civilized people. If they accept independence, fine. If they don't, then just like Scottish people did, they accepted to live with the UK. And then that way, the society won't be...
What you're asking, sir, is people who already have a constitution in their hand, which says that Spain is indivisible, to give 2 million people, I think you said, the right to vote to break up the country. That's quite a big ask.
Yeah, but then you have to live with the chaos and I hope not, much worse situation in coming days and weeks and months, which may not lead you to a better society, which hopefully every Spanish people admire and dream for, I guess.
That's absolutely true. Who'd like to make a brief comment before the break? No, someone who hasn't spoken. The lady at the back, please.
I don't want to get into if there's hate in one side or the other. I'm sure there is in certain people. You have this everywhere. But one thing that you can really say is that the Spanish government, the People Party, they gain more votes within Spain if they go like massively against Catalan will. So it's really like if they stick to this position, like we don't want to talk about anything that is against the constitution, like what they're doing, they're gaining way more votes in Spain, which is where their voters are. So there's no like really incentive for them to listen and go into like a dialogue.
Julia, in a word, are you disappointed at the total silence of the EU in the face of all this?
Yeah, it's really disappointing. Like a difference within the UK, like in Catalonia, I would say most of the people believe in the European project and are proud of being part of it. Yeah, you're ready to leave it? Well, the thing is, like in a personal way, I think that I want to be part of an EU that helps the people and reinforces human rights.
Becoming the king of Spain than an independent Catalonia being in the EU. But we'll come back to you and this debate after this. We're watching Kalimantan with me, George Galloway, on Mayadeen television, discussing Catalonia, Spain, the referendum, and what happens next. We took the camera onto the streets of London to hear what the people thought. Take a look at this.
So do you think if Catalonia did gain its independence, it would convince other countries to follow suit?
It depends on what terms they will get their independence. I mean, if they get their independence and they are still under Spain, I don't think so.
I think it would be, I mean, if we start going that way, then I think there will be a lot more independence movement that will rise in Europe, and that will take that as an example to do the same, which could be very chaotic in Europe if that has to happen.
If Catalonia were to get independence, that would ignite other countries to ask for independence as well.
Definitely. That would like ignite a second referendum for Scotland, or I don't know, maybe Bayern in Germany or something like that.
Given the way the referendum was carried out, turnout was fairly low, even though it was overwhelmingly for leaving, for independence, sorry. So yeah, I think it'll trigger the conversations, but I don't think it's not quite as drastically as some people are making out.
Perhaps it might lead to other regions, other places asking for independence. I don't know.
Do you think if Catalonia were to gain independence, a lot of other countries in a similar situation would follow suit?
It's hard to say. I couldn't speculate on that.
Very interesting. Julia, before the break, you had the floor and you didn't get enough time. So kindly expand upon the point that you wish to make, especially if you wouldn't mind addressing a point that emerged there, that it seems inevitable that the breakup of Spain will fuel separatist movements and tendencies in other parts of Europe. And is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I don't think it's to me to say if it's good or bad. I think if the majority of the people in another country, of the majority of that people decide it is best for them to do that, who am I to say they're not? So I think the EU should be promoting democracy within, not just repressing or pretending nothing is
Sure,
happening.
but the EU is a collection of existing states, and those existing states have votes and power. And so you're not going to get the EU rewarding Catalonia for leaving Spain for the obvious reason. As I said, I'll be the king of Spain before that happens.
Well, the thing is, maybe the EU wants a partner after we've declared independence. Maybe they want a partner that is paying good taxes and giving like a good share of the public money that the EU is using. I don't know if we can afford as Europeans just losing partners.
We are back to this point, aren't we, inadvertently? Catalonia is very rich, and some of you are boasting about it. Of course, California could make the same case. If it were an independent state, it would be as rich as Cretius. It's an odd thing for, I say this to any leftists in the audience, it's an odd thing for leftists to be supporting separatist movements whose basic platform is to make themselves richer, no?
Well, for me, it's not the basic, the most important reason for me to be supporting independence, but maybe for other people
Well, you're saying the EU should welcome you because you're rich and you're...
Well, yeah, that's not the reason for me to support
Trust me, the
independence,
EU has
though.
got plenty of money. They've got plenty of money. They owe us money, but that's another matter. Who else? Yes, the gentleman next to you.
My name is Allosa. I'm also a Catalan. And I wanted to continue with this issue you raised about leftists and right wing.
Yeah,
first of all,
I'm old-fashioned that way. I think the real divisions are between left and right.
And I wanted to answer the way you started by saying that this Catalan government is right-winged.
Yeah.
And you said that really easily, I think, but you should be aware that the party which is governing Catalonia right now is actually a coalition between a center-right party, which is by far more in the center than the Popular Party in Spain, and the center-left, which is Esquerra Republicana. For the first time, they joined together and they went to the election together. They won. And they are acting and taking all these decisions they are taking now with the support of CUP, which is radical left. So I think it's from 72 deputies, just 32 are from this center-right party. I would say center-right, you can call it right. But therefore, I think it's a mistake to think that this comes from the right. And in addition, it's a mistake to think that it comes from the Catalan elites, because we've seen we don't want to be independent just to get richer or to be more rich, and with that movement make the other workers in Spain poorer. It's not about that. There's
no, I'm sure that's not your motivation, though that is an inevitable consequence, isn't it?
It may be. It may be that it's not like that. It depends. Maybe Spain finds its way better without Catalonia. Who knows? But in Catalonia, we have seen, the first thing we have seen is that the economic power is the first one to be afraid. The big companies are the first one which are directly taking moves against the independence.
You've got your billionaire here. He's just ready to put billions in.
But I'm sure you're aware this last week a lot of big companies have...
Yes, I mean the normal, forgive me, the normal capitalists will choose Spain over Catalonia. It's a simple matter of numbers.
Okay, so therefore our movement cannot be, you cannot say that it comes from the right or from the...
Well, it does come from the right. The main left-wing parties are against it.
That's not true, and not in Catalonia. Not in Catalonia, and it's a fact that the political reality in Catalonia is totally different than in Spain. You cannot think in the same terms. In Spain, you have two big parties, the classical parties, like in here, the conservatives and the social democrats, so to say. And now you have two new parties, one at each side, which are like the same party but smaller, but the new version, but it's the same. But in Catalonia, the Popular Party, which governs Spain, is the fifth force in our parliament. They don't have votes in Catalonia. That's why they are so aggressive with Catalonia. They have nothing to lose because they don't have anything already. So
no,
I
sure,
think,
but people who think and act like them are in power in Catalonia. That's what I started out by saying. They both got right-wing governments.
No.
They both believe in capitalism. They both believe in the EU. They both believe in NATO. They both believe in Israel. So I've got kind of no dog in this fight. That's the point I was trying to make.
Yeah, but the government, sorry to be repetitive, but the government is not right-wing in Catalonia. It's a coalition of two parties that went together to the election. They blended into one...
We could argue about definition. For me, they are right-wing. It's one right-wing government arguing with another right-wing government.
Well,
that's how I see it.
I can tell you some laws that the Spanish government has shut down from this government. They wanted to put a tax on empty flats in order to tax people who is having empty flats and people sleeping in the street.
The economic policy of the Catalan government is neoliberal. It's a neoliberal government in Barcelona and in Madrid. This is a fact.
Well, I don't agree on that. Probably they are all capitalists because they are within the system. But the thing I can tell you is that the only openly anti-capitalists in Catalonia are supporting independence, if that's a thing that matters to you. But I also wanted to change a bit the subject.
Sure, go ahead.
And to point out one thing that I think outside of Catalonia is not that clear, or maybe it's not that well known, which is that this is a movement that comes from far away. It's been on media just last year, the last weeks for sure, but last 2 years. But this movement for self-determination of Catalan people, this comes back from the 80s. In the 80s, it started as a civil platforms that were, of course, there were a few people back then, but with the years, people started to feel that that was actually a right we have as Catalan people, because we cannot trust just in the law. We cannot say just the rule of law is what impairs, because if we have to change the constitution in order to be able to pass a referendum, that's never going to happen. We are a minority. We are a national minority in Spain, and to change the constitution, you need two-thirds of the Congress in Madrid. Even if 100% of Catalans were for that, we cannot do that. So it has to be another way that is not the law. And that's been asked in several ways. It started back in 2009. There were referendums that were conducted locally. Each municipality in Catalonia, 2009, that's 8 years ago, every municipality put ballot boxes and people were symbolically to vote. And that we're talking about 8 years ago. Since then, the Catalan governments have tried a lot of things. They've tried to arrange another financial system with Spain in order to make it more fair. We've done demonstrations, a symbolic consultation in 2014, and nothing worked. The answer from Madrid is no, 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 no. So appealing to the law will never solve this problem, never, ever.
You see the dilemma. That was very well spoken, by the way, but the the alternative of not following the law is, well, I don't need to spell it out. It's unlawful, and that which is unlawful is not going to be rewarded in the international system. But a good contribution. Let me hear from the distinguished-looking gentleman at the front. Go ahead, sir. Introduce yourself.
I would like to praise anybody who praises me, he said. My name is Nuno, and I would like to just make a few points into what my colleagues around the room have been saying. Perhaps I am adding to it. Maybe I'll create conflict, and I hope I do create conflict, because I think it's nice to create conflict at times.
Certainly good television.
There are three strands that I would like to touch, and one of the strands is that, as far as I know from history, that part of the world, which is we called Catalonia, has always been a problem. Franco decided that Catalan was not to be existent, so he wanted to abolish the language. When you abolish a language, you abolish people. They tried to do that with the Basques. They never succeeded. Apart from that, today, we are hearing in the room that there are consequences of people saying we don't like the Catalans. Well, let me put it this way. I have been around Spain many times, and I have asked that question to people. There is a smear within probably some classes of people in Spain that they don't like Catalonia.
Which classes?
I'm not going to tell them, because I would like to hear from the rest of my colleagues in here.
How tantalizing.
Yes, indeed. That's another aspect of the people don't come open to say to you, I am Scottish, I don't like you because you are Welsh. They never do say. And we can see that even today in England, there is a big hoo-ha about equality and diversity. It's people, like in the United States, people to say, I don't like colored people or black people because they don't want to mention it. But let's put that on the side, because I think, from my point of view, it's the dialogue has got to begin now. And that dialogue will end in more blood, as we have seen from the voice box. I hope not, and I sincerely in favor of a multicultural union in Spain. However, that brings about the position of economy. We know for sure that that part of the world, Catalonia, is actually producing the GDP much higher than anywhere else in Spain. Mm-hmm. We know that investment in Catalonia is much wider and much bigger than the rest of Spain. Spain is struggling at the moment because people in the north and the Basques, they want to do their own thing. They want to invest on their own, they want autonomy. Well, what about the Americans? We're talking about Jewish people, investing in Spain. What about Americans? They have said nothing so far. They've been in the background, keeping very quiet. But already there is something, and I learned this from a company called Marks and Spencer's. How do you know, when it's gone on fire? Well, it's 50 of this and 50 of that, as they say. So there is no smoke without fire, and there is no fire without smoke. So I think, positively, the United States is behind some of the projects which Spain has got, and that's why Mr. Rajoy is coming out loud to say, well, if you don't agree, we come over to you, and we will put shutters on your face, and that's it. Now, that's very good. That's very well said. But also the king should have spoken, and he didn't. And he belongs to the Bourbon family, which was ousted from Spain, some time ago. So my remit in all this is that, as they say, dissidence is freedom, and freedom allows people to vote, which is a universal suffrage. So if it's universal suffrage, let the people vote.
There you go. Down with kings, I say. I'll be right back. You're watching the final segment of كلمة on Mayadeen television with me, George Galloway, coming from London, but discussing Spain and Catalonia. Better press on. Yes, gentleman in the middle.
Yeah, my name is Jordi Font. I'm also Catalan. I would like to say just one thing, also to move the debate to another perspective, which is that there is a deadlock, and I wonder how to solve this deadlock. And from my perspective, what I see is that there is one side that has asked like 18 times, to the Spanish government that they would like to have a referendum for the independence of Catalonia. But from the other side, there is a government that has all the time said that that was not possible and has rejected this demand. It was last week that the Catalan president has done a step that was again trying to find the place, find the room, and bring the other side to the table for negotiations. What was the answer? The answer was the Article 155. So I wonder how this other side, the side that is trying to find a dialogue, that has already tried it for the last 8 years, how this side can bring the other side to the table to find a solution. The other day, on Friday, Jean-Claude Juncker, the president of the European Commission, said that he would like to be mediator, but he will not do any mediation if one side will not ask him to do. And this other side, guess who is? Is the Spanish government. So you see who is now taking the hard line. It's not the Catalan government, it's the Spanish one. So I hope that at some point, and not long ago, there will be a way to force the Spanish government to go to the table and recognize that Catalonia, as a nation, has the same rights that the Scottish to vote and decide for their future.
What could force the Spanish government to do that? What or who?
To be frankly, I don't know, because what I've seen is that that side has tried everything and has not succeeded. But I think that that's because there is a misconception from the Spanish side. And the misconception is that they have not recognized, never, that Catalonia is a nation. And until they don't recognize that, I don't think that they will allow the Catalans to express and decide their future.
So what will happen next then? I can assure you they will not, and you're not going to go away. So what happens next?
I don't know what will happen, but what I think is that neither of the sides will do anything that they will regret. And I don't think that the Spanish will allow the Catalans to have a referendum for independence. And I don't think that the Catalan government will either step back on their will of having that referendum.
Well, we'll know, as someone said earlier, we'll know within hours what the next immediate step is. But a unilateral declaration of independence is, as we have already canvassed, unlawful, illegal, cannot be recognized by any of the states that want to continue to have relations with Spain. That leaves you playing Espanol every Saturday.
Well, as you know, George, I told you that as British and as someone that likes football very much, you should be glad that Catalonia may have a Catal exit, because Barca may have the opportunity to play the Premier League from now onwards.
You persuaded me, I'm with you.
So, but having said so, maybe what will bring the Spanish government to the table is actually the declaration of independence. So maybe there will not be a recognition, but maybe that will create the new situation, the new atmosphere that will bring the other side to the table.
If my auntie had a beard, she'd be my uncle. Let's take this gentleman at the front. Go ahead, sir.
I wanted to put two clarifications. First, there is not only two options, independence or keeping Spain. For example, Podemos want a federal republic, no? Or the left wing in Catalonia, which is the coup, they don't want a republic, they want a socialist federation that includes Valencia and the Balear Island with Catalonia. So it's more than two options. And the second issue I wanted to raise is about the point of Israel that you asked me before. I think it's too simplistic that said, Israel is going to recognize Catalonia, that is why I am going to be against. Because also Venezuela is thinking in recognizing Catalonia. And many people in Catalonia, like the CAP or the coup, are very pro-Palestinian. So it's a little bit simplistic to say so. So
no,
I wanted to
explain by your colleague next.
Yeah,
I didn't finish my point. I forgot to say that half of the pro-independentist movement is 100% pro-Palestinian and anti-Israel, but another half of...
No, you explained carefully why so many Catalan people admire Israel. You were very candid about that. It's just it's making Isaac a little bit embarrassed. That's why I'm accentuating it.
I am putting points of clarification, saying it's not so simplistic. There are not only two solutions, independence or keeping in Spain, and it's not, or if you are for independence, you are for Israel or not. It's more complex. That's the only thing I wanted to talk.
Everything in life is complex. Let's take the big capitalista, over here.
The first thing to say, it was a vote. It was run as a proper vote. You didn't vote lightly. People were queuing from about 5 in the morning. Several people deep, going, maybe kilometres, 1, 2, 3, so just huge crowds of people. So it was all very well done from the Generalitat side. Now, the Spanish police decided to disrupt it. There was disruption outside, but the vote was run it was a referendum, it was a proper vote. There's various points that we've covered. I didn't say that the Spanish hate the Catalans, because there's Spanish people and there's the Catalan people. But by and large, those people that came and smashed up our schools and our village halls and that type of thing. There is this sort of inbuilt hatred. It's not just about Catalans, it's about people with money and having more than them, okay? But maybe these people have studied and maybe they've worked harder and, Spain doesn't want to communicate.
Class hatred then?
It's a whole mixture of things, but it's money and the background of the way the societies are built up, which is very, very, very different, is having an impact here. Catalonia is a much more community-based society, and I think it cuts across different pockets will kind of get on with each other, which I don't think happens in other parts of Spain. It's just a very different place. Now, there's a lot of misinformation from Madrid going on, especially about these companies moving. They're not actually moving. They're not actually moving 4,000 people from their head office. What they're doing is, most of them, okay, and I've looked at all the stats, is a temporary move because they're in this tax year of their fiscal department. So instead of having to sort of do half a year with Spain and half a year with Catalonia, depending what happens, they've gone with Spain. So they're not actually moving their companies. There's actually companies coming in. I've got already about 4 or 5 lined up that I want to work with over the next 6 months, but I need to just let things settle down in Catalonia. But while the PP are in power and they can, retaliate with violence and that type of thing, there's just no way we will invest in Spain. I mean, it's not a market that we can support at all. Thank you.
Yes, gentleman at the back, yeah. He needs to recover the position.
No, I just wanted to make one final point and also to answer to one of the things that last week the Foreign Affairs Minister of Israel said he won't recognize an independent Catalonia and that they are strong allies with the Spanish government. And the Spanish king has a lot of good relations there. So
they all do.
That being said,
the king, Rajoy, Puigdemont, they all love Israel.
And that being said, I just wanted to make a final point saying that has to be clear to everyone who's watching that the Catalan nationalist movement is not the strict nationalism as we've known it before in Europe. It's really different. It's not about ethnic origins. It's not about right wing or not wanting the others to live with you, but it's about recognizing within a people to feel part of a people with everything that it incorporates, a lot of values, a language, a culture.
I understand your sincerity in saying that, because I automatically recognized your vibe, but you're living in denial. This is an ethnic nationalist movement. It is, whether you like it or not. It says, we are Catalans. We must have a Catalan state.
It is.
Your friends have agreed, so let me finish my point. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just not something that's going to appeal to me. And to many of the people actually watching this program. You're entitled to it, but you can't deny that it's an ethnic nationalism. Otherwise, you'd stay in a multi-ethnic Spain and fight for a better Spain, wouldn't you?
It's two different things. I mean, within the Catalan nationalist movement, you have a lot of people who is born and raised in Catalonia who is against, and people who come from outside and is for independence. Myself, I'm born in Bosnia. I wasn't born in Catalonia. I don't have any grandparents or fathers that said to me, like, you have to feel Catalan because you're different from the Spaniards. No, it just, I feel like part of a community. And the only thing we are saying, the only thing which can consider us as nationalists is that we consider that we are a nation. But that doesn't mean that we don't want the others, or that the ones who are against independence are not part of that nation. This nation is full of people from other parts of Spain who are supporting independence, and people who are from Catalonia for 10 generations and are against. The only thing that I'm saying is that this nationalism, the thing that we consider us as a nation, it's not narrow-minded. It's not narrow-minded at all.
Natalia, he's your best man. Hire him. You're next. Get rid of the rest.
He's actually having a proposal already. And you have said yes, right? Yeah. Don't forget it. Ethnic. I believe more in the word how you identify or recognize, yourself. There's many people that recognize themselves as Catalonian, whatever is their background. Just remember, a few weeks before the referendum, we had in Barcelona a terrible terrorist attack. Everybody saw the reaction. That's our society. This is how we respond to that. 1 to 3 days after that, there was a parents who lost their child in that dreadful attack, hugging the imam of their village to show the world this is how we are. And that photo, that picture, I think all of you, I hope all of you saw it. So it's not about ethnic, it's about how you recognize, how you identify yourself.
Yeah, but I'm sorry to go on about this, but it explains, you see, the fellow feeling with Israel, because both believe in ethno-religious states. In your case, nothing to do with religion, but it's an ethno-state. Israel likes Catalonia, Catalonia likes Israel, because they believe that states should be ethno-states. Now, I care nothing about ethnicity or nationalism. Yeah. My flag is red. My country is the future. I don't care about any of your nationalisms. It's all nonsense to me. But you're entitled to it. You're clearly gripped by it. The question now is, what are you going to do next? I mean, is this going to be a war? Or what's going to happen next?
As some of us have said, we don't know, because there's the other side that is a question mark. The only thing that we know is that they had said, the representative of the government, be careful, President Puigdemont, because as you remember, we had campaigns, and remember what was the...
This was an outrageously fascistic statement
exactly,
that the government in Madrid made, that Puigdemont could end up as the former Catalonian leader. I'm just explaining it for the wider audience. Go ahead.
But I still have in my mind, my conscience and my civilized brain that there will be a way that's, for the show. Politics are 90% for the show.
Gentlemen there?
I think all over the world, what I have noticed, I'm sure you're an expert and you can comment more, is that negotiations happens between equal partners. So if you take the example of Israel-Palestine, there won't be a solution because one is so strong and another is so weak with no support from anywhere. With regard to Catalans, they got advantage of economy behind them, with 20% of GDP of Spain. But what they have to bear in mind that in future, possibly tomorrow, in the days or weeks to come, they will have to accept the uncertain times ahead and consequences, sanctions, because the world won't support them, majority of them, whether it's UN, America, Europe, because it's against the status quo of states. If they are willing to take that risk and happy to survive with less economy, less money in their pockets, then they can pursue the movement further and hopefully achieve what they want to achieve with a lot of hardships, and God knows how long it will take. Otherwise, I think it won't happen, sadly.
Well, it's true that man doesn't live by bread alone. If the British people voted to leave this European project that the young lady referred to, despite being told that we'd all end up poorer as a result. We took that decision with our eyes wide open. It remains to be seen whether it turns out to be true or not. This has been a fascinating discussion. I can assure you that our audience across the world will be largely untutored in the issues that have been discussed this evening. So I'm grateful to you all, whatever point of view you had. I've been George Galloway. This has been كلمة on Al Mayadeen television in London.